Team Talking Sports.
What is going on, Hoops fans? Back at it with another New York Knicks video. And I'm going to try to have a lot more Knicks videos up for you guys this time around this offseason. Obviously, if you watch my channel, you know it's mainly Giants, but I'm going to try to do as much Knicks content as I possibly can. I'm also going to have a weekly show, probably starting at the end of the NBA Finals with JD Sports Talk, a guy that I really like, been a great subscriber of mine for a long time, where we're going to talk some Knicks offseason content, where we're going to talk about free agency, we'll talk about rumors, we'll talk about the draft. And after the finals, the offseason is going to be fast and furious. It's going to be here before you know it. And I'm going to try to, give my opinion on a lot of the prospects that I could see the Knicks going after in free agency, as well as potentially in the draft, in which the Knicks this year have the 19th and 21st overall selection. But in this video, I kind of wanted to dive into the Knicks roster, talk about some of the things that they're going to have to decide with this roster in free agency, and talk about the Damian Lillard rumors as well. I do think the Knicks this offseason are going to be very aggressive. There were signs to it in the season this year when they were rumored to be going after every player under the sun. Zach LaVine, Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, they were knocking down doors and seeing if players were available because Tom Thibodeau seems like he's trying to get this team to be a win-now team as quickly as possible. And the Knicks certainly exceeded expectations this year. It was a really fun year. I can't say thank you enough to everybody that blew up the streams. Most people thought they'd win 20, 25 games. They ended up winning over 40, making the playoffs, and of course, in the end, having a disappointing finish in which we lost to the Atlanta Hawks 4-1. And what that playoff series showed me, at least as a fan, at least in my opinion, well, you can outwork teams in the regular season, right? There's back-to-backs, there's players that take games off, and there's teams that kind of rest up for the playoffs. But come playoff time, when the Knicks' intensity got met by the Atlanta Hawks in a playoff series, I think it showed that the Knicks lack talent. They just do. They don't have enough talent to be able to go up against the best teams night in, night out in a 4-out-of-7 series. And it's great to have a team that overachieves. It's great to have a team that's scrappy. But even the 90s Knicks teams, and I'm not even trying to compare these two teams. The 90s Knicks teams were much better. Patrick Ewing, one of the top 30, 40 players of all time. But even those teams lack the talent to be able to put themselves over the top. And this team is nowhere near that in terms of talent. Yes, Julius Randle had a great year. He exceeded expectations. I still think he's going to be in the long-term plans of this basketball team. Yes, R.J. Barrett, which to me was the thing that I was looking at most going into this year. What was the growth going to be for Barrett? Got a lot better. Is he where we need him to be yet? No, but he got a lot better. He improved in every statistical category known to man. Emmanuel quickly was a nice surprise, but they don't have the star talent to be able to compete for a championship. And what will they do this offseason to try to do that? Well, if you look at the free agency market, outside of Kawhi Leonard, there isn't really anybody that's a superstar. So if the Knicks are going to attack free agency and they're not going to get Kawhi Leonard, maybe they could get a guy like Chris Paul. I've read rumors with that as well, but you would think the Phoenix Suns would look to keep him there if they could, being that they're contending for a championship right now this year, but he's looking for a multi-year deal. Would that be in the Knicks' best interest? Well, I think it might be if he's willing to sign it for a 3 or 4 year deal. Yes, I know he'd be pushing 39, 40 years old, but he's a guy that could really progress the career of some of these young players on this team, namely Obi Toppin and R.J. Barrett, if you had a real true point guard there like Chris Paul. But if they're not going to be able to get a superstar in free agency, they may have to look to the trade market. And there's a number of players that they may be interested in, one of which, there have been reports that have come out, is Damian Lillard. But first, let's take a quick look at the Knicks roster, and let's look at some of the decisions that they're going to have to make, because everybody says, well, the Knicks have $75 million in cap space. They have the most cap space in the NBA, and that's all well and good, and that's true, and they could theoretically bring in 2 high-profile players, but there's also some players on this team that are not signed next year. And if you look at the roster, there's only a handful of impact players that are definitely coming back with the Knicks this year. That's Julius Randle, who's set to make $19.8 million on the third-year extension. R.J. Barrett, just over $8 million. Obi Toppin, of course, the rookie this year. Kevin Knox, I think that's his last year on his contract. Then you have Luka Vildosa, the European point guard that we picked up on a 4-year deal. Emmanuel Quickly, Mitch Robinson, and Norvel Pell. In terms of the free agents, you have Reggie Bullock, you have Taj Gibson, you have Nerlens Noel, you have Elfrid Payton, who we're obviously going to let walk, Alec Burks, Frank Ntilikina, and Derrick Rose. And I think there's a lot of decisions that have to be made there, and a lot of those guys definitely exceeded expectations this year with the New York Knicks and are going to be looking for raises. Specifically, Derrick Rose. Rose only made $7.6 million this year. If a team's willing to give him $15, $16 million on a 3-year deal, he's probably going to take it. Would the Knicks be willing to match that? Same can be said for Nerlens Noel. Noel had a great year this year for the Knicks, and you have Mitch Robinson coming back. So are they going to look to bring him back? Same can be said for Alec Burks. He's probably going to be looking for a raise. So I think the Knicks have to answer a lot of in-house questions before we find out what they're going to do out-of-house. But rumors have come out that the Knicks are interested in potentially acquiring Damian Lillard. And the first question I have is, what is the price going to be? Damian Lillard would absolutely fill a major need for this team. He's one of the top 10 players in the league. He was miraculous in this year's playoffs. Even in a losing effort, the Portland Trailblazers simply didn't have the talent to match up. The guy put up 55 points. He was incredible. But this is what came out from Shams. Sources say NFL teams, including those in the top markets, are already intensely monitoring this situation in Portland and how it develops to look for an opening to make trade offers. So he doesn't specifically mention the Knicks there, but then later on, Stephen A. Smith does. This came out from Damian Lillard. This was a past quote that I kind of wanted to bring up. I think I got it off the Portland Trailblazers website, where he talked about potentially joining a super team and really showing that he was committed to the Portland Trailblazers. So he may not even necessarily be looking to get out of Portland, in which he already has a contract. For me personally, that's just not something I could do, Lillard said last February. I'd rather go out there and put my best foot forward and lose before I do that, because I know I can win if I do that, when talking about potentially leaving to join a super team like the Lakers, so on and so forth. So in the past, he has shown that he's been loyal to Portland. This coming from Stephen A. Smith. Several calls have come from the Blazers' way. You got a lot of teams, about 6 or 7 different teams, who believe they can get their hands on him. They think they've got a shot. One of them includes the Knicks, who are scheduled to have about $75 million of cap space with some picks, but also the Clippers, the Miami Heat, and who knows what the Lakers may try to do. Stay tuned. SNY's Ian Bagley reported in May that the Knicks were monitoring Lillard's situation in Portland, noting that people around Lillard have previously wanted to see him in a bigger market. Lillard, who will turn 31 on July 15th, is owed $176.2 million over the next 4 seasons. He is set to earn $39.3 million in 2021-2022 and is under contract through the 2024-2025 season. And then this is kind of talking about what the Knicks would realistically have to give up, and then I'll give my opinion as to whether or not I think that would be in the best interest of the basketball team. Realistically, the Knicks would likely have to send at least 3 first-round draft picks. Now, if you look at the Knicks drafts right now, they have 2 first-round draft picks this year, 19 and 21 overall. In addition to that, they have the 32nd overall pick, I believe. And then they have 1 first-round pick in the next draft and 2 the draft after that. Now, I'm pretty sure the way trades work is you cannot trade back-to-back years in terms of first-round draft picks. So, if the Knicks were to make a trade, they couldn't trade a 2021 and a 2022. It has to skip years. So it would be a 2021, 2023, 2025 if they were giving up first-round draft capital. But 3 first-round draft picks, multiple pick swaps, and Barrett, or, instead of Barrett, some combination of Robinson, Toppin, and Quickly to make a trade happen. Now, when he says some combination, I would think 2 out of those 3 players for the Knicks, that would leave the cupboard empty. And I am not giving up R.J. Barrett. I know a lot of Knicks fans may be reluctant, may happily trade R.J. Barrett, and they say, what are you talking about? You got to trade R.J. Barrett. R.J. Barrett, to me, is still evolving. He's still very young. He's going to be 21 next year, and I think he matured and got a lot better this year, and I think, not to say that he'll ever be Damian Lillard, but I think he could get a lot better. And when you look at it, you're talking about a guy that's 10 years younger than Damian Lillard and a guy that could be a vital piece of the future of this basketball team. And if you're to trade R.J. Barrett and you're to trade all those draft picks, what I'll ask you as Knicks fans, because ultimately, at least in my opinion, what I want this team to be is a true title contender. If you're going to trade all those draft picks and R.J. Barrett, does Damian Lillard with Julius Randle make this team a true title contender? And my short answer to you is probably no. Now, if you have the ability to bring in another superstar, well, then maybe I say go for it. But if that is not the case, I have no interest in trading R.J. Barrett. I still think he's going to be a vital piece of the future of this basketball team. Now, in regards to the other trade, now, and of course, there's other options, free agency, so on and so forth. That is something I'd at least entertain. If you had to give up 2 of Mitch and Quickly or Mitch and Toppin with 3 first-round draft picks, and you can bring them in via that way, that's something I'd at least entertain. But that's a lot to give up. And like we've learned in the past, where will that get us? Will that get us to a championship-level team? When we got Carmelo Anthony and we gave up a king's ransom, yeah, it made us better for a short period of time, but it never got us past the second round of the playoffs. And my goal as a Knicks fan is to ultimately get a championship. Now, I fully recognize the first-round draft picks in the NBA are not the same level in terms of significance as first-round picks in the NFL, especially considering that us as Knicks fans have to expect that this team's going to be a lot better. A mid to late first-round draft pick it's nice to have. It's good to have. and you want to build your team via the draft, but you're more than likely not going to get a superstar picking between 15 and 20 in the NBA draft. So I recognize that, and a lot of times you use your draft capital in order to obtain superstars, but you have to ask yourself as a Knicks fan, is getting Damian Lillard and giving up everything worth it? I don't know. To me, if I could keep Barrett, I may entertain it, especially if I'm able to bring in a free agent along with Damian Lillard. Will Lillard be a Knick in the end? Who knows? There's going to be a lot of teams obviously bidding for his services, and it could all be rumors and speculation, and he may ultimately want to stay with the Portland Trailblazers. But one thing I could say for sure as a Knicks fan, I am almost positive this offseason that the Knicks are going to be ultra aggressive. Where there was smoke, there was fire. And the Knicks wanted to be aggressive in season this year. There just really wasn't a trade there for the taking. Of course, they went out there and they got Derrick Rose. They're trying to make this team as good as possible. And it doesn't seem like Tom Thibodeau's in the business of trying to develop young players, right? Guys like Kevin Knox, he didn't feel like they were good enough to play. They didn't play. Even Obi Toppin didn't get a ton of minutes. Frank Ntilikina didn't really play. He's going to play the players that he feels like give him the best chance to win on a nightly basis. So I don't think the Knicks are in the business of taking this slow. I think they're going to try to, within reason, if it's a good trade, try to bring in a high-impact player to get this team well to within contention. And if you think the Knicks are going to sit back and watch the Nets dominate New York for the next 4 to 5 years without at least trying to put up a fight, you're kidding yourself. I think the Knicks will be aggressive this offseason, and I do think if there is a trade there possible, that they will at least entertain bringing in Damian Lillard. We've heard the name too long. We've heard it too often throughout the course of the season, and I do think the Knicks will show interest if Lillard, in fact, does open up the opportunity of leaving Portland. But we'll have to wait and see. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.